Tortura every species abandoned this vulnerable alien race, except the Deathworlders. The Velith were the most beautiful creatures in the known galaxy. Their bodies were made of living crystal. They stood tall and thin, with skin that looked like glass filled with soft light. When they moved, their bodies made soft musical sounds. When they spoke, their words came out like songs. They were wonderful to look at and wonderful to hear. But the Velith were also the weakest species anyone had ever seen. They came from a small moon called Velith Prime. This moon had very low gravity. The air was always calm and warm. There were no storms. There were no earthquakes. There were no dangerous animals. For millions of years, the Velith had lived in perfect peace. They never needed to fight. They never needed to run. They never needed strong bodies. Because of this, their bodies had become very fragile. A fall that a human child could survive would shatter a Velith into pieces. Temperature changes that other species found mild could crack their crystal skin. They could not lift heavy things. They could not move quickly. In a galaxy full of dangers, they were like glass flowers in a world of stone. But what the Velith lacked in strength, they made up for in mind. They were brilliant. Their understanding of mathematics was beyond anything other species could achieve. They designed engines that could push ships faster than anyone thought possible. They created art and music that made hardened warriors cry. Their minds were their gift to the universe. 300 years ago, the Hegemony found them. The Hegemony was a great alliance of many alien species. They called themselves the civilized races. They had rules and laws and councils. They traded with each other. They protected each other. When they discovered the Velith, they saw great value in those brilliant minds. The Hegemony made the Velith an offer. Join us, they said. Give us your knowledge, your designs, your beautiful creations. In return, we will protect you. We will keep you safe from all the dangers of the galaxy. You will never need to fear. The Velith agreed. What choice did they have? They knew they could not protect themselves. The galaxy was vast and full of threats. The Hegemony seemed kind. Their offer seemed fair. For 300 years, the arrangement worked well. The Velith lived in special habitats on Hegemony stations. These habitats had perfect temperature control. They had low gravity. They had everything the Velith needed to survive. In return, the Velith worked. They designed better engines. They solved problems that had confused other scientists for centuries. They composed music that became famous across 1,000 worlds. The Hegemony treasured them. They showed off the Velith to visitors like precious jewels. Look at our Velith, they would say. See how beautiful they are. See how smart they are. We take such good care of them. But treasured is not the same as valued. Jewels are kept in boxes. Jewels are shown and admired. But when trouble comes, jewels are the first things left behind. The trouble came in the form of the Sketh Imperium. The Sketh were a swarm species. They looked like insects the size of dogs with hard shells and sharp claws. They did not think as individuals. They thought as one great mind spread across billions of bodies. And that mind had one goal: consume and expand. The Sketh moved through the galaxy like a plague. They would arrive at a system, strip it of all resources, and move on. Planets that took billions of years to form were eaten in months. Species that had existed for millennia were wiped out in days. Nothing stopped them. Nothing slowed them down. When the Sketh turned their attention toward Velith space, the Hegemony held an emergency council. The discussion was short. Each species did the math. How many ships would it take to defend Velith Prime? How many soldiers would die? How many resources would be spent? And what would they get in return? A low-gravity moon with few resources? A species too fragile to evacuate quickly? The numbers did not make sense. The cost was too high. The benefit was too low. One by one, the civilized species made their decisions. The Korath withdrew their fleet. The Mindari pulled back their troops. The Yilish, the Torvain, the blessed unity of Keth. All of them sent polite messages expressing their deep regret. All of them calculated that the Velith were not worth saving. The messages arrived on Velith Prime like death sentences. Elder Harmonious, Light of Evening, read them to the council, his crystal body dim with each word. We regret that strategic necessities prevent us from offering military assistance at this time. We value our partnership with the Velith people and hope for a peaceful resolution. We will remember your contributions to galactic civilization. They will remember us, Evening said. His voice was flat. They will remember us after we are dead. The Velith had no army. They had no weapons. They had no ships capable of fighting. For 300 years, they had trusted the Hegemony to protect them. Now the Hegemony was gone. Young Velith asked their elders what they should do. The elders had no answers. How could they? They had never faced danger before. Their entire species had evolved in safety. They did not even have words for war in their language. They had borrowed the concept from other species like a strange and terrible idea. Some Velith tried to flee. They boarded the few transport ships they had and flew toward Hegemony space. But the borders were closed. The civilized species did not want refugees. They did not want to be reminded of what they had done. The transports were turned away with polite apologies and firm refusals. Others tried to hide. They went deep into the caves beneath their cities. They sealed the entrances and hoped the Sketh would not find them. But they knew this was foolish hope. The Sketh always found everything. The Sketh consumed everything. Crystalline Voice of Morning was young for a Velith leader. She had been chosen for her brilliant mind and her beautiful voice. Now she stood before her people with nothing to offer but truth. "We are alone," she said. Her voice rang through the great hall like a sad bell. "The galaxy has weighed our lives against their convenience, and they have found us wanting. We will face what comes with dignity. We will sing our final songs. And when we are gone, perhaps someone will remember that we existed." The Velith began to compose their death songs. They gathered in their crystal halls and made music together one last time. They said goodbye to each other. They prepared to die. They did not know that somewhere in the vast darkness of space, a small ship crewed by creatures from a nightmare world had received their distress signal. They did not know that help was coming from the most unlikely source in the galaxy. The Deathworlders were on their way. Every species abandoned this vulnerable alien race except the Deathworlders. Humans were new to the galaxy. They had only made contact with other species 50 years ago. In that short time, they had earned a reputation that made other species nervous. The problem was Earth. Every species in the Hegemony came from what scientists called garden worlds. These were planets with stable climates, gentle weather, and safe environments. Life on these worlds was easy. Evolution was slow and peaceful. The creatures that developed there were adapted for comfort, not survival. Earth was different. Earth was classified as a Category 12 death world, which was nearly the highest danger rating possible. On Earth, the gravity was crushing. Humans carried their own body weight around all day, every day, building dense bones and strong muscles just to stand up. The temperature could swing from burning hot to freezing cold within a single day. The atmosphere contained a gas called oxygen in high amounts. This gas was so reactive that it could make things burst into flame. Humans breathed this dangerous gas every moment of their lives. Earth had earthquakes that split the ground open. It had volcanoes that buried cities in fire. It had hurricanes that destroyed everything in their path. It had floods, droughts, ice ages, and mass extinctions. The planet seemed to be constantly trying to kill everything on it. And then there were the other creatures. Earth was filled with predators: lions, tigers, bears, wolves, sharks, crocodiles, thousands of species that evolved to hunt and kill. Humans had grown up surrounded by things that wanted to eat them. They had learned to fight back. They had learned to hunt the hunters. They had become the most dangerous predators on a world full of dangerous predators. When the Hegemony first studied humans, they were horrified. Human bodies could heal from wounds that would kill other species. They could survive broken bones, deep cuts, and serious infections. They could function without sleep for days. They could run for hours without stopping. They had evolved as persistent predators, creatures that chased their prey until it collapsed from exhaustion. Most disturbing of all was their psychology. Humans had a concept called spite. They would hurt themselves just to hurt an enemy. They had something called stubbornness, which made them refuse to give up even when logic said they should. They formed intense emotional bonds and would die to protect those bonds. They were not rational in the way other species were rational. The hegemony allowed humans to join their alliance, but they kept them at a distance. Humans were given territory on the frontier, far from the civilized core worlds. They were tolerated but not trusted. They were useful but not welcome. Commander Yuki Tanaka did not care what the hegemony thought of her species. Tanaka was 43 years old. She had black hair turning gray at the edges and dark eyes that had seen too much. She had joined Earth's United Nations Space Service 20 years ago. She had fought pirates. She had rescued colonists from failing stations. She had done the hard, dirty work that needed doing on the frontier. Her ship was called the UNSS Persistent. It was not a warship. It was a converted cargo hauler with some weapons bolted on. The Persistent had a crew of 200 humans, including a small group of Marines trained for ground combat. It was not much, but it was hers. The distress signal came through on a quiet Tuesday. Tanaka was in her cabin, drinking coffee and reading reports, when her communications officer called her to the bridge. The signal was weak, coming from a system several light years away. The automatic translator turned the musical Velith language into flat English words. Please help us. The Sketh are coming. The hegemony has abandoned us. We will die. Please, if anyone can hear this, please help us. Tanaka listened to the message 3 times. She pulled up information on the Velith. She saw their fragile crystal bodies. She read about their brilliant minds. She learned that every civilized species had calculated their worth and decided they were not worth saving. Something cold and hard formed in her chest. It was not anger exactly. It was something deeper, something human. She contacted Hegemony Command and requested permission to render assistance to Velith Prime. The response came back within the hour. It was polite and bureaucratic and completely heartless. The sector has been designated for strategic abandonment. Human vessels are advised to withdraw to safe distance. Do not interfere with Hegemony strategic planning. Tanaka read the message to her senior officers. They sat around the conference table with faces like stone. Lieutenant Commander James Okafor spoke first. He was a big man from Nigeria with a voice like thunder. They are telling us to let an entire species die because the math does not work out. That is exactly what they are telling us, Tanaka said. Chief Medical Officer Sarah Chen shook her head. She was small and precise, with quick hands trained to heal. The Velith cannot even evacuate themselves. Their bodies are too fragile for fast transport. They will be slaughtered. Marine Captain Diego Reyes leaned forward. He was covered in old scars, each one a story of survival. How many Sketh ships are coming? Tanaka checked the data. Best estimates say around 800. The room went quiet. 800 ships against one converted cargo hauler. The math was not complicated. The math said they would die. Reyes smiled. It was not a nice smile. It was the smile of a predator seeing prey. Good odds, he said. I was worried it might be too easy. Tanaka looked around the table. She saw no fear in their eyes. She saw determination. She saw stubbornness. She saw that strange human quality that made them run toward danger instead of away from it. She thought about what her grandmother had told her as a child. In this world, Yuki, there are people who help and people who watch. You must decide which one you will be. Tanaka had decided long ago. Set course for Velith Prime, she said. Maximum speed. Commander, the navigation officer said carefully, we will be disobeying direct orders from the hegemony. I am aware. They could remove us from the alliance. They could declare us criminals. Let them, Tanaka said. Her voice was flat and final. I did not join the service to let innocent people die because some bureaucrat decided they were not worth saving. We are going. Anyone who disagrees can file a complaint when we get back. No one disagreed. The Persistent turned toward Velith Prime and engaged its engines. The crew began preparing for combat. Marines checked their weapons. Engineers reinforced the hull. Medical staff set up emergency stations for casualties they knew were coming. In her cabin that night, Tanaka wrote a letter to her daughter back on Earth. She explained what she was doing and why. She told her daughter that sometimes the right thing and the smart thing were not the same thing. She told her that being human meant more than just having human DNA. It meant standing up when standing up was hard. She did not know if she would live to send more letters, but she knew she would be able to face herself in the mirror, and that mattered more than survival. The persistent flew through the darkness toward a dying world. Behind them, the civilized species of the Hegemony watched their sensors and wondered what the crazy Deathworlders were doing now. Ahead of them, the Velith sang their death songs and waited for the end. They did not know that the end was about to be canceled. Every species abandoned this vulnerable alien race, except the Deathworlders. The Velith had prepared for death. This was not as sad as it might sound. For the Velith, death was another experience to be faced with grace and beauty. They composed songs about it. They created art about it. They gathered together in their crystal halls and shared memories of better times. Crystalline voice of morning walked through the streets of the capital city. The buildings around her were made of grown crystal, shaped over centuries into delicate spires and domes. In the pale light of their sun, the whole city sparkled like a dream. Soon it would all be gone. The Sketh would consume it. They would leave nothing behind. Morning stopped at a small garden where young Velith were playing. Their crystal bodies chimed softly as they moved. They did not fully understand what was happening. They knew something bad was coming, but death was an idea too large for their young minds. An elder named Soft Echo of Twilight stood nearby, watching them. He was old, his crystal body clouded with age but still beautiful. "They are so innocent," Twilight said. "Perhaps that is a mercy. They will not understand what is happening when the end comes." Morning did not answer. She did not know what to say. The warning came suddenly. Sensors detected a ship entering the system. It was moving fast, heading directly for their world. Morning felt her hope die. The Sketh had arrived early. She gathered the council in the Great Hall. They would face the end together, as their species had always done everything together. But then strange reports started coming in. "The ship is not Sketh design," a technician said. Her voice was confused. "It appears to be human." Human? Morning had heard of humans. Everyone had heard of humans. They were the newest species in the galaxy, and they were terrifying. They came from a world of constant death. Their bodies were dense and powerful. They ate other creatures for food. They had conquered their own planet through violence. "Why would humans come here?" Twilight asked. No one had an answer. The human ship entered orbit. It was not impressive. It was boxy and practical, covered in patches and repairs. It looked like it had been through many fights and had refused to die. Then a smaller shuttle separated from the main ship and descended toward the surface. The council debated what to do. Perhaps the humans were here to loot their world before the Sketh arrived. Perhaps they wanted to capture Velith for experiments. The stories about humans were dark and frightening. They were predators from a predator world. Morning made a decision. She would meet the humans herself. If they had come to kill her people, she would at least die trying to talk to them. That was better than hiding and waiting. The shuttle landed outside the city. Morning walked toward it alone. Her crystal body caught the light and made soft music with each step. She was afraid, but she did not show it. A leader could not show fear. The shuttle door opened. The creatures that stepped out were from Nightmare. They were shorter than Velith, but they looked incredibly dense. Their bodies were thick with muscle, built for a world with crushing gravity. They had skin that looked soft but was actually tough and could heal itself. Their eyes faced forward like hunters, designed to track prey. They moved with a fluid grace that spoke of violence barely contained. The leader of the group was a female. She had dark hair and dark eyes and a face that showed age and experience. She wore a simple uniform with symbols Morning did not recognize. A device on her chest blinked with translation software. Morning prepared herself to beg for her people's lives. She prepared to offer anything, everything, if only these monsters would spare them a quick death. The human female did something unexpected. She lowered herself slowly to the ground, going down on one knee. She made herself smaller, less threatening. Her voice when she spoke was soft. "I am Commander Yuki Tanaka of the human vessel Persistent," she said. "We received your distress signal. We are here to help." Morning did not understand. The translator must be broken. She asked the human to repeat herself. "We are here to help you," Tanaka said again. "The Sketh are coming. We know. We came to fight them. But why? Morning asked. Her voice cracked with confusion. We have nothing to offer you. We cannot pay you. We cannot help you. Your calculations must show that protecting us is inefficient. We have no strategic value. Tanaka looked at her for a long moment. Something passed across the human's face. Morning did not know human expressions well, but it looked almost like pain. Where I come from, Tanaka said slowly, we do not calculate the value of lives. Someone needs help. We can help. That is all that matters. Morning stood in silence. The concept was so alien that she could barely process it. Every species she had ever known made calculations. Every species weighed costs against benefits. That was how civilization worked. That was how rational beings behaved. These humans were not rational. They were something else entirely. Other humans emerged from the shuttle. They began unloading boxes and equipment. Morning watched them work. They moved with purpose and efficiency. They set up strange machines that hummed with power. They carried weapons that looked brutal and effective. A human male approached Morning. He was large and dark-skinned, with a deep voice. His name was James Okafor. We need to set up defensive positions, he said. The Sketh usually attack from multiple directions. Do you have underground shelters? Yes, Morning said. She was still struggling to understand what was happening. We have caves beneath the city. We plan to hide there. Good. We will put civilians there. We will fight on the surface. You will die, Morning said. She did not mean it as an insult. It was simply fact. There are 800 Sketh ships. You have one ship. Okafor smiled. It was a strange expression, showing teeth. On Earth, showing teeth was a sign of friendship. To Morning, it looked terrifying. Maybe we will die, Okafor said, but the Sketh will know they were in a fight. They will remember this place. They will remember the people who stood here. Over the next several hours, Morning watched the humans transform her city. They built barriers and defensive walls. They set up weapons at key positions. They trained the few Velith who volunteered to help, teaching them simple tasks like carrying supplies and treating wounds. Commander Tanaka worked alongside her crew. She did not act like other leaders Morning had seen. She carried boxes with her own hands. She checked equipment herself. She knew every crew member by name. That night, Morning found Tanaka standing alone on a balcony, looking up at the stars. Your people must think you are insane, Morning said. Probably, Tanaka agreed. She did not seem bothered by this. We have a saying on Earth, the right thing and the easy thing are rarely the same thing. Morning moved closer. You know you cannot win. Your ship against 800. Your 200 soldiers against millions of Sketh. This is not a battle. This is suicide. Tanaka turned to look at her. Her eyes were steady and calm. When I was young, she said, my grandmother told me a story. There was a great fire and all the animals fled. But one small bird kept flying to the river, filling its beak with water and dropping it on the flames. The other animals laughed at the bird. What can you do against such a fire, they asked. The bird answered, I do what I can. She looked back at the stars. Maybe we will fail. Maybe we will all die here. But we will have tried. And sometimes trying is enough. Sometimes standing up when everyone else runs away changes something. Maybe not the battle, but something. Morning did not fully understand, but she felt something shift inside her crystal heart. For the first time since the Hegemony abandoned them, she felt something other than despair. She felt hope. 3 days later, the Sketh arrived. 800 ships filled the sky like a swarm of angry insects, and 200 humans prepared to show the galaxy what Deathworlders were made of. Every species abandoned this vulnerable alien race, except the Deathworlders. The Sketh arrived with the rising sun. 800 ships darkened the sky like a living cloud. They blotted out the light and cast shadows across the crystal city. From the ground, they looked endless. Commander Tanaka stood on the bridge of the Persistent, looking at the tactical display. Red dots filled the screen. Each dot was an enemy ship. Each ship held thousands of Sketh warriors. The numbers were beyond counting. Her crew looked at her. No one spoke. There was nothing to say. They had all known this moment would come. They had all chosen to be here anyway. All hands, battle stations, Tanaka said. Her voice was calm. Marines begin civilian evacuation to the caves. Weapons teams, fire at will. The Persistent was the first to fire. Its weapons were not elegant like Hegemony technology. They were brutal human designs, built to cause maximum damage. Missiles streaked toward the Sketh fleet. Energy weapons cut through the darkness. The first Sketh ships exploded, then the second wave, then the third. But there were so many more. The Sketh returned fire. The Persistent shook under the impact. Alarms screamed. Damage reports flooded in. A section of the hull collapsed, venting atmosphere into space. Engineering teams rushed to seal the breach. On the surface, Marines herded Velith civilians toward the underground caves. The Crystal people moved slowly, their fragile bodies unable to handle quick movement. Sergeant Amara Okonkwo screamed at her team to move faster. A Sketh landing craft crashed through the atmosphere. Then another, then dozens more. They hit the ground hard, designed for assault rather than comfort. Doors blew open and Sketh warriors poured out. They were nightmare creatures, each one the size of a large dog, with armored shells and razor claws. They moved as one, controlled by their collective mind. The first wave hit the human defensive line. Private Marcus Chen was at the front. He was 22 years old from a small town in California. He had joined the service to see the stars. Now he saw monsters charging toward him. He opened fire. His weapon kicked against his shoulder. Sketh fell. More Sketh came. Something hit his arm. He heard the bone crack. Pain exploded through his body. He looked down and saw his left arm hanging at a wrong angle. Blood poured from a deep gash. A Hegemony soldier would have collapsed. A Hegemony soldier would have screamed for medical help. A Hegemony soldier would have retreated. Chen was not from a Hegemony world. He was from Earth. He braced his broken arm against a wall. He kept firing with his good hand. His vision blurred with pain, but he did not stop. He could not stop. There were Velith children behind him. There were families who would die if he fell. A medic reached him during a brief pause in the fighting. She looked at his arm and her face went pale. "You need to get to medical," she said. Chen shook his head. "Wrap it. I am staying." The medic argued. Chen did not listen. Eventually, she wrapped his arm in a field bandage, gave him painkillers, and moved on. Chen kept fighting. He would hold that position for 11 hours. In the sky above, the Persistent was dying. The ship had taken too many hits. Systems were failing. The hull was cracked in dozens of places. Commander Tanaka ordered non-essential crew to evacuate. She stayed on the bridge. A Sketh ship rammed them directly. The impact threw Tanaka across the bridge. She hit a console hard enough to break ribs. She tasted blood in her mouth. She pulled herself up and kept giving orders. When the Persistent finally lost power, Tanaka made a choice. She ordered the crew to evacuate to the surface. They would continue fighting on the ground. The ship was dead, but they were not. The escape pods launched. 200 humans fell toward Velith Prime like angry meteors. On the ground, the battle had become chaos. Sergeant Okonkwo was leading a group of Velith children through the streets when a Sketh ambush hit them. Chemical weapons filled the air. The chemicals were designed to eat through Sketh shell armor. They were even more effective against human lungs. Okonkwo felt the poison burning inside her. Each breath was agony. She could feel her lungs scarring, tissue dying. A rational being would have fled to safety. Okonkwo was not rational. She was human. She picked up 2 Velith children, one under each arm. She ran. The children weighed almost nothing in the low gravity. Her lungs screamed with every step. Blood came up when she coughed. "Keep your eyes closed," she told the children. "Do not breathe. I will get you there." She ran for 3 miles through poisoned air. She delivered the children to the caves. Then she collapsed. Medical teams dragged her inside and started treatment. They said she would never breathe properly again. Her lungs were ruined. She did not care. The children were safe. Captain Diego Reyes was flying one of the remaining fighters when he saw the Sketh troop carrier. The carrier was heading directly for the main cave entrance. If it landed, thousands of Sketh would pour out. They would find the civilians. They would find the children. The Velith had no weapons. They had no defenses. They would die like flowers under boots. Reyes checked his weapons. Empty. His fighter had been damaged. Most systems were offline. He had no way to stop that carrier, no conventional way. He opened a communication channel to the ground teams. "This is Reyes, troop carrier incoming to cave entrance. I have no weapons. I am going to ram it. Get everyone clear." Commander Tanaka's voice crackled back. "Reyes, negative. There must be another way." "There is no other way," Reyes said. His voice was calm. "Tell my family I love them. Tell them I did what I had to do." He aimed his fighter at the carrier. He pushed the engines to maximum. The carrier tried to evade, but it was too big, too slow. Reyes was a predator from a predator world. He did not miss. The explosion lit up the sky. The Velith in the caves felt the ground shake. They heard the distant thunder. They did not know that a human had just traded his life for theirs. They would learn later. They would never forget. The battle lasted 72 hours. 72 hours of constant fighting. 72 hours of humans refusing to die. 72 hours of impossible resistance against impossible odds. The Sketh had never encountered anything like it. Their collective mind could not understand what was happening. Their conquest algorithms predicted that defenders would retreat when losses exceeded acceptable limits. Humans had no acceptable limits. Humans just kept fighting. When their weapons were empty, they used knives. When their knives broke, they used fists. When they could not stand, they crawled. A Sketh commander studied the data. The numbers made no sense. The humans should have broken long ago. The humans should have fled. The humans should have surrendered. But they would not stop. On the morning of the fourth day, the Sketh fleet withdrew. Not defeated. The Sketh were never truly defeated, but they were cost-conscious. They calculated the resources needed to take this small moon against the resources they would gain. The equation had changed. This world was not worth the price anymore. There were easier targets. There were weaker species. There were worlds that would not fight back with such insane determination. The Sketh left Velith Prime behind and moved on. In the ruined streets of the Crystal City, bleeding humans looked up at the sky. They watched the enemy fleet disappear into the darkness. They had done the impossible. Commander Tanaka sat against a broken wall. Her ribs were broken. Her arm was burned. She had not slept in 3 days. She was alive. Around her, Velith emerged from the caves. They looked at the destruction. They looked at the bodies. They looked at the humans who had sacrificed everything for strangers. Crystalline voice of morning approached Tanaka. Her crystal body was cracked in places, damaged by the fighting, but she was alive. Her people were alive. "You saved us," Morning said. Her voice was thick with emotion. "Why? We still do not understand why." Tanaka looked up at her. Despite everything, she smiled. "Because you needed help," she said. "That is all the reason we ever needed." Every species abandoned this vulnerable alien race, except the Deathworlders. News traveled fast in the galaxy, faster than ships, faster than light itself. Within days, every species in the Hegemony knew what had happened at Velith Prime. A single human ship had stood against 800 Sketh vessels. 200 humans had defended a world that the civilized species had abandoned. They had fought for 72 hours without stopping. They had bled and died for strangers, and they had won. The story spread through 1,000 channels. Scientists analyzed the battle data. Military experts studied the tactics. Politicians debated what it meant. Everyone had an opinion. Everyone was talking. The Hegemony Council held an emergency session. The Great Chamber was filled with representatives from every civilized species. The Karath sat in their floating chairs, their gas bag bodies pulsing with anxiety. The Mindari coiled together, their snake-like forms hissing with concern. The Yilish, the Torvan, the blessed unity of Keth, all of them were present. They were not discussing how to help the Velith. They were discussing how to explain why they had not helped the Velith. "The situation is regrettable," the Korath representative said, "but our strategic calculations were sound. We could not have known that the humans would intervene." "That is not the point," the Mendari representative hissed. "The point is that they did intervene. They made us look like cowards." "We are not cowards," the Yilish representative clicked. "We are rational. We made the logical choice." "The logical choice was to let an entire species die," said a new voice. Everyone turned. A human had entered the chamber. She was small and tired-looking, with bandages visible under her uniform. Her arm was in a sling. Her face was bruised. She walked with a limp. Commander Yuki Tanaka of the UNSS Persistent. You were not invited to this session, the Karath representative said coldly. I invited myself, Tanaka replied. She walked slowly to the center of the chamber. She looked around at the gathered representatives. You were going to discuss us. I thought you should hear what we have to say. The chamber fell silent. The Hegemony did not invite us to join your alliance, Tanaka continued. You tolerated us. You kept us on the frontier because you were afraid of us. You called us Deathworlders like it was a curse. Her voice hardened. But when the Velith needed help, where were you? Where were your mighty fleets? Where were your civilized principles? You ran. You calculated the cost of innocent lives and decided they were not worth paying. You left them to die. This is not appropriate, the Yillish representative began. I lost 47 crew members defending Velith Prime. Tanaka cut him off. 47 humans died for people they had never met. People who were not their species, not their family, not their concern. They died because it was the right thing to do. She pointed at the gathered representatives. Can any of you say the same? Can any of you look at the Velith and tell them why your lives were worth more than theirs? No one answered. The chamber doors opened again. More figures entered. Crystalline Voice of Morning led a delegation of Velith survivors. Their crystal bodies caught the light and filled the room with soft music. Many of them were cracked and damaged. All of them were alive. Morning walked to stand beside Tanaka. The human and the Velith looked at each other for a moment. Something passed between them. Understanding, respect, friendship. Morning turned to face the council. For 300 years, we gave you everything we had, she said. Our minds, our art, our inventions. We trusted you to protect us. We believed you when you said we were valued. Her voice rang through the chamber like a bell. You calculated our worth and found it wanting. You measured our strategic value and deemed it insufficient. When death came for us, you sent polite messages and closed your borders. She gestured to Tanaka and the other humans. But the Deathworlders, the barbaric humans you fear and mock, they asked a different question. They did not ask what we were worth. They asked if we needed help. When the answer was yes, no calculation could make them leave. Morning's crystal body brightened with emotion. We do not understand humans yet. Their world made them strong in ways we cannot comprehend. They heal from wounds that would kill us. They fight through pain we cannot imagine. They have something inside them that does not know how to quit. She paused. But we know this. The measure of a species is not in what they can gain. It is in what they will sacrifice. The Hegemony sacrificed nothing. The humans sacrificed everything. We will never forget which one stood with us. The chamber erupted in arguments. Representatives shouted at each other. Accusations flew. Old alliances cracked under the weight of shame. In the chaos, no one noticed the message being broadcast across the galaxy. Human ships were answering the call. From colonies on the frontier, from stations in deep space, from Earth itself. The humans were not leaving Velith Prime. Within weeks, a small fleet gathered in orbit around the crystal moon. They were not warships. They were colony ships, cargo haulers, medical transports. They carried supplies, equipment, and volunteers. Thousands of humans who had heard what happened and wanted to help. They began rebuilding. Humans worked alongside Velith to repair the damaged city. They built new defensive systems using human technology. They established permanent supply routes. They created something that had not existed before, a real partnership between a Death World species and a Garden World species. The Sketh Imperium watched from a distance. They had moved on to other targets, easier conquests, but they remembered Velith Prime. They remembered the humans who would not stop fighting. They marked that system as too expensive to attack again. 1 year later, Crystalline Voice of Morning stood before a very different gathering. The Velith had called a conference. Representatives came from across the galaxy, not just hegemony species, but independent worlds, fringe colonies, and unaligned systems. They came because they had heard the story. They wanted to know more about the humans who had defied an empire. Morning spoke. When the darkness came for us, we learned something important. We learned that civilization is not measured by technology or wealth or power. It is measured by what we do when others are in need. She looked at the human delegation where Commander Tanaka sat with her crew. The humans taught us that strength is not just physical, it is moral. It is the strength to stand up when standing is hard, to fight when fighting seems hopeless, to protect the weak even when the weak cannot protect themselves. Morning walked to the center of the stage. The hegemony abandoned us. The humans did not. From this day forward, the Velith people stand with humanity, not because we owe them a debt, though we do, not because we are afraid, though we were. We stand with them because they showed us what true civilization looks like. She turned to face the crowd. We invite others to join us. Not an alliance of calculation and strategic advantage, an alliance of principle, an alliance that will never leave innocence to die because the math does not work out. Slowly, representatives began to rise. Species that had been ignored by the hegemony. Species that had been bullied and threatened. Species that had watched the events at Velith Prime and seen something they wanted to be part of. The Deathworlders had started something. A new way of thinking. A new kind of alliance. A revolution of conscience. After the conference, Tanaka found Morning standing alone on a balcony. The human woman joined her. They stood in comfortable silence, looking up at the stars. "Thank you," Morning said finally, "for everything." Tanaka shrugged. "It is what anyone should do." Morning made a soft chiming sound that the translator identified as laughter. "That is exactly the point," she said. "Anyone should, but only humans did." She turned to face Tanaka. "My people have a saying, the light that shines brightest often comes from the darkest places. Your Earth is a dark place. It made you hard. It made you strong. But it also made you something beautiful. You showed us that the death world did not make you monsters. It made you heroes. It gave you the strength to stand when others fall, the courage to fight when others run, the heart to protect when others abandon." Morning's crystal body sang softly. The galaxy feared the Deathworlders, but we Velith have learned something different. We learned to be grateful for them, because when no one else would help us, the Deathworlders came. Tanaka smiled. It was a tired smile, but real. "We will always come," she said. "That is who we are. That is what it means to be human." Above them, the stars glittered in the darkness. Somewhere out there, other species were learning about what happened at Velith Prime. Other species were asking themselves hard questions about what they believed and who they wanted to be. The galaxy was changing, and it had started with 200 humans who refused to run away. The end.